Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We'll just give people a little bit more time to join. I can see the participants list growing there as people come in from the waiting room. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bruce Feuder. I am the Head of Education Curriculum at Grok Academy. And joining us today will be Nicola O'Brien, who is one of our lead educators as well. So we'll both be in the webinar. Nicola will be here to monitor the chat and keep on top of things that are happening there. And I'll be your main presenter today. So given the time and the fact that Nicola has many of the participants in the room now, we might get underway. Today's topic is on cybersecurity in the primary years, making it relevant for primary students. And to give you a little bit of my background, and it's good to see you, Peter, as well. It has been a while, but my name is Bruce Feuder. I am not just the Head of Education Curriculum at Grok Academy, but was also one of the writing team on the Australian Curriculum Digital Technologies back in 2013, and have been involved a little bit this time around as well. And prior to joining Grok Academy, I was a teacher, head of faculty, and a deputy principal in secondary schools here in the ACT. So I'm coming to you from Canberra on Ngunnawal country. And before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet, which is probably all over the place today, and acknowledge the contributions that they have made to the educational growth and development of the areas in which we live, and welcome their elders past, present, and emerging. So let's get underway and talk about the first of our topics, and that is why cybersecurity and how we make it fun. One of the things that I really want to emphasize with cyber is that it is a very exciting topic because it's especially relevant to students, especially if we consider the last 18 months that we've been working in with our various lockdown around the country. One of the things that it really emphasizes for students is that it's fun to break the rules, that being an investigator for a lot of cybersecurity issues means stretching the boundaries, the constraints on what things are and what you're supposed to do. And because of that, it lets you do things that you wouldn't generally be allowed to do or get away with in other subjects. So the other thing that's nice about it is that it's easy to find some practical applications of the work that you're doing. There are plenty of opportunities to reinforce what you're teaching. And one of the great things, I think, that really does stand it apart from what you're doing elsewhere is it's very, very different to a lot of what you would do in other places in the curriculum. So this makes it a perfect candidate for what we call hard fun, the type of subject that can be seen by students as being challenging and rewarding, not hard and therefore difficult to engage with, and not fun and therefore not relevant or important. It's one of the things that's exciting about digital technologies more broadly, but it's one of the things that makes cybersecurity such an interesting thing to be teaching in schools. A lot of these things that we'll be talking about today apply in the secondary space as well as they do in the primary space, but we're going to be focusing on primary examples. And to do that, let's start by taking a look at cybersecurity and where it sits in the curriculum. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the Australian curriculum, version 8, and its relationship with the New South Wales K-6 Science Technology syllabus. So in the Australian curriculum, we make references to cybersecurity throughout the digital technology subject. Many of those references point to data, how it's secured, how it's transmitted, how we manage access to data, elements of data privacy. All of that is spread at various places throughout the content descriptions. It doesn't live in a specific location. And then partnering with that is the ICT general capability, where there are explicit references to cybersecurity in the applying social and ethical protocols and practices sub-element of that capability. So that's where it exists in the Australian curriculum. As far as the New South Wales K-6 Science Technology syllabus goes, and of course it was informed by the work done by the Australian curriculum in version 8, it refers to safe use of technology. And so cybersecurity and cyber safety definitely fit into that area. It talks about understanding and early in the curriculum or early in the syllabus meeting needs, and later in the syllabus critiquing needs. And obviously needs related to working in the digital space have significant dependencies on security, specifically the transmission and storage of data. The transmission of data is called out within the syllabus as well. And then any reference to technical protocols also provides a context through which you can talk about some of the technical reasons or technical solutions that allow cybersecurity to, I guess, inform the way that we think about designing our solutions. Now, all of the work that we do at the Grok Academy includes lesson plans, and for all of the Cybermarvel activities, we've done exactly that. We've provided full curriculum mappings for all of those lesson plans on our Grok Academy website. But the other thing that I wanted to point out to you is that with version 9 of the Australian curriculum just around the corner, one of the things that it does that's significantly different is it calls out cybersecurity as its own key concept. And it does that through the security and privacy key concept in the next version of the Australian curriculum. So while that won't directly feed into the syllabus in New South Wales immediately, what it's likely to do is probably see a change in the role of cybersecurity in the next version of the K-6 science tech syllabus. And the things that are specifically called out in the digital technology subject in version 9, in foundation or kindergarten, we're talking about students understanding what personal data is and how ownership is treated around data, both by you as an individual and who should have access to it. In year 1 and 2, we have students applying some of the security protocols through the use of their school account, understanding how personal information around their school account is stored. In year 3, 4, we get to the point where we're starting to talk a little bit more about password structure and what the risks associated with being online are, particularly around your information. And in year 5 and 6, we get to the point where students are actually starting to understand the security of passphrases, the risks associated with password reuse and why that's a bad idea. And we begin exploring some of those ideas around your digital footprint and your privacy, around the permanence of data published online, and how profiles of the individual can be put together by combining small pieces of information from various places. Now, in the digital literacy capability, the old ICT general capability renamed in version 9, what it does is it calls out the more general application of these skills and knowledge that's taught in digital technologies and provides a bit more of contextual understanding around what is appropriate for students in each of these band levels. So between the digital literacy capability and the digital technology subject, one of the things that's become really evident in version 9 of the curriculum is exactly what the expectation should be around cybersecurity practices, skills, and knowledge for students to engage with in the primary years. And I think that's really good. A lot of it is done to essentially set students up to gradually understand as they get older, as they mature, and start to approach or live more in the online space independently outside of school. It prepares them for a lot of what they need to be able to do to actively engage in that environment in a responsible way. Now, you can do this through a range of activities, and we've, as part of the Cybermarvel month of October, have developed a number of activities specifically for primary school to cover a lot of these skills that are mentioned both in the version 8 of the curriculum, version 9, and therefore that are present in the K-6 sci-tech syllabus. Those are digital footprint and data privacy. They are password security, scam avoidance, and cryptography. And what we've done to make sure that they're accessible to teachers and students, regardless of where you are, we've made sure that some of the activities are unplugged in nature and some of them are online. And you've really got the flexibility to choose what's going to work best for your students and your context, the environment that you're in. And I think one of the great advantages of the activities that we've designed is there are lots of different ways that you can use them to drive discussion in your classroom and really engage students with the deeper concepts and ideas. So for the remainder of today, what I'm really going to do is dive into each of these topics, talk a little bit about the sort of rationale between the activities we've constructed, how they feed into learning outcomes, and I guess give you some examples of what these activities look like if you haven't really had a chance to dive in and explore the Cybermarvel activities yourselves yet. So let's start with the digital footprint. And I guess the big question, the idea that we want students to start thinking about when we're talking about digital footprint and online presence is, what does your data say about you? You know, how can you understand specifically what the data that is available about you online, what kind of picture does it paint, and what are the implications of that? So let's talk first about the unplugged activity and what we might actually do with this one, because it's easy to do in this kind of asynchronous webinar format. We're going to actually use the annotations in Zoom. So depending on whether or not we've managed to get the configuration right for Zoom, you should have an annotate tool at the top of the window. In fact, I think what I've given you here is an older version of what is visible. So it may not be view options. You may have an annotate button directly. But once you open the annotate tools, you should also have access to a stamp. And what I want you to do just quickly is, if you've been able to find and locate that stamp tool somewhere in your annotation tools in Zoom, I'd like you to just stamp the screen somewhere, and we should start to see, there we go. It looks like you've all been able to find it. Doesn't matter what stamp you're using. It looks like it's all operating as it should. We're going to be using the stamp, and we're going to do this unplugged activity as a group and talk a little bit about some of the learning that's going on. And I know some of you we've engaged with before in different ways through the work we've done at Grok Academy and previously the ACA. So some of you will have seen this activity before, but for some of you, I hope this is a new way of exploring some of these ideas with students. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask the question of whether or not something is okay to share online. And in a moment, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a piece of information, some data. It could be personal in nature, it may not be, it may be quite public. And what I want you to do is I want you to use your stamp, and I want you to basically indicate whether you think that is okay or to share online, or whether it's something that you don't share online. So we're going to clear those annotations from the screen. I think given that Nicola currently has the control over here, she's going to have to do the clearing of it for me. She just has. And now we're going to dive in and look at our first bit of data. So your name. If you are online, is your name something that is okay to share online? You can click on the big okay to share card there if you think it is, or is it something that you shouldn't share online? So we've got a few annotations there coming up on the screen on the left-hand side, a couple of people choosing to go with don't share. I think we'll give people an extra 4 seconds to put a mark one place or the other. And then what we're going to do is we're going to leave all your checks on the screen, and we're going to move on and have a look at the answer here. It turns out that in the vast majority of cases, your name is public information. People who know you know your name. It's the kind of thing that is presented or given up to people in many interactions. It's not something that on its own is necessarily going to identify you. This may be questionable if you've got a really unique or obscure name, but most of the time, this is something that is essentially okay to share online. Nicola, I'll get you to clear the screen, and we're going to ask the same question now about your town or city. So this is not, you're not saying I'm Bruce in Canberra. It's just, can you post, maybe under a pseudonym or an avatar, the town or city that you live in? And so we've got a whole stack of things. Is that people going in the middle and splitting the difference? I'm going to force you to commit one way or the other at this stage. We've got a number of people ticking that okay to share box, a few people over there in the don't share. And I'll give you another couple of seconds. 1, 2, and we'll reveal the answer for this one too. It turns out that, like your name, a town or a city is generally quite safe to share online. It's public information. Towns and cities generally contain large populations, and identifying someone purely on that basis is not an easy thing to do. Of course, as you share more and more of your information, you can make a reasonable case to argue that this might not be something that you post online. You definitely would avoid doing so if you had a very obscure name and you were sharing the two bits of information together. But in isolation, your town or city is generally something that's safe to share online. Nicola, clear the screen for me one more time, and we're going to dive in, and I'm going to ask you about your banking PIN. Is that something that would be okay to share? A flurry of activity now on the don't share side of the screen. And if you haven't yet had a chance to stick a stamp on the screen, I'm not going to bother, because I think we've basically got a unanimous response here, and correct. A banking PIN is a fairly private piece of information. It's absolutely necessary if you're going to get access to someone's money physically through an ATM, and therefore it's definitely something you do not share because there's just too much risk associated with the consequences of having that information get out. Nicola, we've got 2 more to go, so I'll get you to clear the screen again, and this time we're going to ask about your home address. Is that something that would be okay to share online, or is it something that you wouldn't share? A flurry of activity on the right-hand side of the screen again, which is great, because yeah, your home address is one of those bits of information that would allow people to really narrow down who you are very quickly. And it identifies a sensitive location that would potentially subject you to quite a lot of risk if it was found out. So our final one, Nicola, clear the screen for me one more time, and I'm going to ask you about your email address. Is that something that would be okay to share, or is it something that you shouldn't share online? Okay, we have a bit of a split here. Generally leaning on the okay to share side, a couple on the don't share. When it comes to your email address, and this one's a bit of a cheat from us, and if you've seen the activity, you'll know that we've got a few of these share with caution cards in there intentionally to generate discussion. Your email address is one of those things that on its own doesn't feel too risky in terms of private information. But when you think about the role that email plays in terms of confirming your identity through things like multi-factor authentication, through password resets and things like that, your email address is often the key to a lot of aspects of your identity. So if you are going to share your email address, the one thing that you need to remember is that how your email address is likely to be used and the risk that it would be exposed outside of the purpose for which it's collected needs to be weighed up for this one. So this is definitely something you would share with caution. And I see in the chat there, Malcolm's come out and said, if I was a student, I would not share. I think with a lot of the things that we have presented on the cards that you can grab as part of the Cybermarvel pack, we could definitely have an interesting discussion about each of these. And I think one of the things that we really want to emphasize here is that on the physical version that we've created and is available through our website and through the resources available on the Cybermarvel page, is that what's most important about this activity from a learning outcome perspective is that the discussion is the key here. What we want students to be thinking about when we're talking about this kind of thing is not just the what of information privacy, but to understand the why. It is far less about getting the answer correct and more important that the issues that students discuss, that their justification for why they classify something one way or the other is clearly understood. And often it's the edge cases and the discussion around some of those types of information that could go either way, or the ones that we've marked share with caution on the card. Those are the discussions that really stand out and help emphasize to students just how important these kinds of these kinds of things are, and why it's important to be very careful about the way that you use, share, and expose your private information. So we have an online activity available as well as part of the resources we've released through the Cybermarvel initiative. And what I'm going to do is, rather than show it live in real time, what I'm going to do is just give you some screenshots, talk a little bit about what's involved in the activity. And then what I encourage you to do is go and take a look at it yourself, get a sense of how long it would take to explore in your class. We've kind of designed these activities to fit in about half an hour, 40 minutes with students. And what we hope is that you'll see that the way that we're presenting this stuff in the online space is really engaging and genuine for students to work with. So what you're seeing in front of you is our privacy and sharing module in the Cybermarvel course on Grok Learning, our learning platform for Grok Academy. And we've got a question here where we ask you to see if you can find Isaac's information on his social media profile. So in the phone, we've created a couple of fake social media apps populated with a whole stack of content that we produced through engagement with teenagers and actors. So these are actors we hired, we got them in, we built relationships between them, we kind of built this believable world on our social media applications. And one of the bits of feedback we've received from teachers where we've on this activity is that the apps themselves feel really genuine, that students really do see themselves as being part of the social networks that we've created. And so for kids to actually work through these activities, it feels like an experience that they may have if they were actually using their own social media apps with their own accounts. And that's kind of what we're trying to achieve here. So to make this super accessible to young kids, particularly those in years 3, 4, as well as 5, 6, this version of our activity uses drop-down options to submit your answers so that students aren't getting caught up with, typos and things that lead to incorrect answers and stuff like that. So the question here is, see if you can find Isaac's profile. Isaac here has shared his email address on his profile publicly. So you really just need to go to his account and you can see it there, and you just select the appropriate email address from the drop down here and submit it. And it tells you whether or not you chose the correct email and got the question right. Now, the questions get a little bit more difficult and complicated. This is another example question later on where this time, instead of looking for Daphne's phone number on her profile, she hasn't shared that information publicly. What we've seen is we've actually got a photo that a friend has posted and tagged Daphne in. And it's the photo that actually reveals the sensitive information here, which is Daphne's phone number. So in this particular case, we've actually asked students to type in the phone number this time, rather than select it from a drop-down. So there's a bit of variation in terms of how students input things. And this time, if you get the number wrong, it actually walks students through the steps that they need to follow to be able to identify the number, put it in and get the answer right. So this is designed to be quite self-directed. When we designed this, we had in mind the possibility that this was all going to have to be done from home remotely during the COVID lockdown period. And so we wanted to make sure that the online activity could be as self-directed and useful for teachers as possible. But it's obviously something you can do in class. You can encourage that discussion, working in groups to sleuth the information that they need. It's quite a lot of fun, and it's quite genuine in terms of the information that is posted. Many of the times when we've observed students using this in the class, we hear things like, oh, mum did that, or I've seen posts like that, or, that's the kind of thing that my brother does or my friend does. And so, it's definitely seen as students as being realistic. And I guess our learning income here is to really emphasize that what you're seeing reflects what actually happens in the real world. And the learning outcome is just that idea to think before you post. We know that students are not going to respond to a prohibition line, right? They're going to post information online. They want to be part of that world. They want to engage with their friends. So to say just don't post online is unrealistic. Instead, we really want to emphasize that idea of when you post something, know that posting it online brings with it a risk and understand that risk before you make that decision. So we're actually in the process of reviewing our activities, the ones that we released back in 2019, and there is going to be a number of improvements coming to you in the platform in 2022. So we have a primary specific, full version of an activity that you could do with the primary students. But one of the things that we're hoping that we're able to do for you in 2022 is make it even more engaging in the primary and secondary versions of these activities. So some good feedback in the chat too, which is excellent. We're continuing to work on on how to help students who get stuck, Sharon. So any feedback that you'd like to pass on, and same to you, Karen, from your chat, please pass it on to us via email to Rock Academy. We'd really love to be able to feed more and more of your ideas and feedback into the new versions of the challenges. One of the next topics we explore in the activities is password security. And what we really want students to understand by the end of this module is what makes a good password. We want them to leave this module equipped with the skills and knowledge to be able to create passwords that are not going to be too susceptible to, rudimentary hacking techniques. So the first thing we do in here is we actually have an unplugged activity to get students thinking about what password complexity is. And this activity is a bit of a game. In fact, rather than reading through the description here, many of you will probably recognize this example of a game immediately. This is Mastermind. I'm not quite sure why I ended up with that random overlay on that particular image, but Mastermind is a game where you essentially put out some colored dots. You get some feedback from the other player about how close this particular code or sequence of dots is to the one that they've designed. And then using the clues and information that's been passed on to you, you tweak the settings, the colors, and the positions of those colors, and you find the code. We've given you an offline version of this. So this little 3-digit crack the code version with some rules that has been written up. So you can play this with the students, no problem. And you can essentially get them to understand that with 3 digits, small bits of information about those passwords will often be enough to reveal the password itself. So the learning outcome here from doing this activity is that passwords are really just secret codes that we use to protect our information. And the more information we reveal about our codes or our passwords, the easier it is for people to access the accounts behind those passwords. So making them harder to guess keeps our data more secure. And the extended version of that unplugged activity actually has students thinking about longer passwords and different combinations that make the password harder to guess than the 3-digit version is. Now, the online activity for this one makes use of that same interface and social network environment that we built. And that interface is presented here. This time though, the emphasis is a little bit different. The questions we're asking are not what information is out there, but can you deduce from that information what a student's password might be? And so here, we've given them a little bit of information. We've said, here's Fabian. You can go and have a look at his account. I've already navigated to his fist bump profile, but that's not where the question starts. Find him on fist bump. If he's got an 8-digit PIN to access his Zinimon account, can you log into his Zinimon account by guessing what his password or username would be. And he talks about his Zinimon username by, in a conversation with friends, basically saying, add me so that we can communicate or collaborate on the game and play together. But it turns out his password or his PIN is not particularly difficult to find. What he's actually done is he's used his date of birth. So we've got the date of birth there, April 15, 2004. If we were to turn that into 8 digits, it would either be 15042004 or possibly 04152004. So, you navigate to the Zinimon app and you log in with his username and password, and the platform tells you when you get in that you've been able to find that password. So we're giving examples of the types of things people do use as passwords that they shouldn't, and really emphasize to students that, if something is easy to guess, it's a bad idea to use it. With here's a slightly more difficult version. This time, with the emphasis is on password reuse. So the Zinimon one is about revealing a password through private information that you've used as the basis of that password. This one's a little bit different. This time, Mia hasn't actually told anyone her password to fist bump, but because she's using the same password in different applications, then because in this discussion with Casey here, she was asking Casey to order an Udi online for her, she got Casey to log in as her account using the password. She provided Casey with that password, and that password is the same one she's using on Fistbump. So now, all of a sudden, you're able to hack Mia's account because you can get into her Fistbump even though you were given or found the password for a different account instead. So, here, there are 2 goals. Don't base your password on things that people can guess. And second, never share your passwords. One of the things that we really want students to get into the habit of understanding is that it doesn't matter what account it is, sharing a password is a bad idea. You might think that sharing your Xbox password doesn't matter and your friend can then log in, download your game and play it. The thing is, that Xbox password, if you use it anywhere else, is susceptible to being broken into, being compromised. And even if you use a password that you're not interested in a throwaway service, if that service leaks your information through what we call a public data leak or some credential stuffing, then you end up being susceptible to security vulnerabilities through no fault of your own, and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's the learning outcome here. Don't share passwords, don't reuse them, and make sure that they're not easy to guess. Just seeing in the chat that one way that Karen did this online, and I think it's a really good suggestion, was being online in Zoom so that students could ask for help if they got stuck. One of the things we really want to continue to develop is our hinting system to try to help students walk through it on their own. But for some students, even using an built-in hinting system is going to be a challenge. So finding a way to make yourself available or to encourage that sort of collaborative approach to solving problems is a good idea. And we've provided the answers to all of these problems in our Cybermarvel documentation. So if you are going to do that and support your students in the same way that Karen's just described there, and Rosie's mentioned this as well, make sure you look at the teacher notes and you've got them ready to go so that you can walk students through the answer. Let's talk a little bit about scams. Scam avoidance is increasingly important, especially since we know that students as young as primary school do have their own phones, and that no matter who manages that phone, often it's the case that if you've got a phone number, you are going to be exposed to scams. It's just the nature of modern phishing attacks and the way that scams work in today's world. So the key to being able to avoid scams is to understand what the red flags you need to watch out for, so that if you see these things in a message, you are informed enough to know that it's likely to be something that you shouldn't engage with. Now, the unplugged activity here is essentially an offline version of our online activity. So you'll see some significant similarities here, and a lot of it is about applying some general learning about what you should be looking out for. So the offline activity is called Scam Detective. Scam Detective gives students some screenshots of an email or a message or a post or a website in their phone. And what it asks you to do, or asks the students to do, is identify any of the red flags that could suggest that the message or thing that they're seeing on the screen is a scam. So we tell them what the red flags you're looking for are, the idea that you need to respond quickly, that something that is being offered is too good to be true, not something that is likely to actually be true, whether or not something's unsolicited, the nature of the source, whether it's a source you trust versus a source that you've never heard of before, whether or not the design itself is genuine, and the nature of the request. So if it's something that doesn't really make sense given the person or the business that's contacting you. And so we give them these examples on the screen, and all they need to do is actually identify as a series of dot points or through highlighting or circles or whichever way you want them to engage with this, which of the red flags are evident. And we provide you with all of the answers in the documents, so you can go into this fully aware of what's going on. And these activities are perfect to do in small groups of kids, because again, what you want to do is you want to generate that discussion. You want them reinforcing these ideas with one another and really hammering home that if you're looking for these 6 things and you're starting to see a lot of them crop up in the same message, it's extremely likely that what you're looking at is a scam. Now, once you've done this, and you've identified these types of things in another message or another thing that's been presented to you, something that's a lot of fun to do is to actually get students to design their own scam, right? Ask them to inject something that is from that list of red flags into a message and create their own scam. If they can build their own scam using some of these techniques, then it's a pretty good indication they're going to see the same things when they receive something of their own. So what you're seeing here is an excerpt from one of our posters, posters that you can either download and print yourself at school, download and send off to a printer if you want nice big versions, or if you haven't yet, I think we still have some available. If you register for one of our Cybermarvel packs, then we'll send out big A0 versions of these posters for you so you can put them up on your, well, there you go. You've got 13 packs left. So if you haven't yet, now's the time to do it. Yeah, Nicola shared the link in the chat. It's a great way to potentially get some of these things to put up around your classroom, and so you can emphasize these ideas and refer to them regularly to students as well. So you never know when an opportunity, a teachable moment is going to come up when you're doing something else in class. Having one of these on the wall and being able to point to it and say, you know, what's going on here? What do you think? Is it genuine? It's a nice little thing to have available to a nice little thing to have available to you in the classroom. So learning outcomes here are pretty straightforward. Know how to identify a scam. If you do know how to identify it, then it's less likely you're going to be scammed by the scammer and therefore have information or your identity stolen. And what I really like about this particular activity is these red flags are things that you can encourage students to go home and easily share with friends and family, right? Did you ask for the message? Was it unsolicited? If you always ask yourself that question, that's going to eliminate a large portion of the types of things that you are likely to get as scams. And the more people you talk to in your family about it, the less likely you're going to be caught up or have to deal with the fallout of someone who's been scammed by a scammer. Now, the online activity continues to use our same infrastructure. Here is a couple of examples of some activities in the platform. Here we've given students an email from Top 10T. And if you're looking at that, in fact, what I might get you to do, if you've still got your annotation tools there, Nicola, do you want to clear the screen for me? With your annotation tools, I want you to annotate in that email the things that you think are indicators of this being a scam. Just stick your stamp on something that suggests that it might be a scam. Is there anything there that jumps out at you? Yeah, I mean, you can't follow the link, but I can tell you now that that link goes off to a dodgy website. So that's definitely a factor. 30 minutes, you're being rushed. Get there or your prize is gone forever. The email address in Top 10T there looks dodgy. Yeah, look, it's clearly trying to get you to act very, very suddenly. And so all you need to do for this particular version of this question is you check the check boxes on the right-hand side there, which red flags you think are evident in this particular message. And then you hit the mark button, and our automated marking system will give you suggestions where you've either ticked something that was unnecessary or you're missing one of the things that you should be checking in that particular example. The sort of next version of this activity is to do what I just asked you to do then, and that's actually annotate the email or the message directly. So this time, rather than just saying this is unsolicited, what we actually ask you to do is to annotate the things that suggest that this is dodgy. So you can see here, the things that have been done is we're using JBH1F1 instead of hi-fi, because in some fonts, ones and I's look the same, so you can get away with that. Not in this font, unfortunately, for the scammer. There's a spelling error there in confirmation. There's a threat that you're going to lose money unless you respond very quickly. The link is clearly dodgy. So what you would do in this online question is you would actually open up our annotator tool, do exactly what you're doing, just click on the things and then it highlights them yellow, like you can see on my slide there. And then when you hit the mark button, again, our marker will check what you've highlighted and it'll walk you through or prompt you to get you to the point where you can identify those things that are actually the giveaways that this is a spam email message. So our learning outcome here, and I'll get you to, clear it for me again, Nicola. The learning outcome here is that scams can be sent to you through a number of different media. So you can get them by emails, you can get them through text messages, you can get them through group chats, and things like your in-game chat. Like you'll often see mobile games, a lot of the games that kids are playing online. There are often bots that are trying to sell in-game currency or encourage you to give up data for free in-game currency and things like that. So knowing what those things are, knowing that they're likely scams, they're all the types of things that we want students to be aware of. Even if they're not engaging in those spaces yet, it's good for them to be suspicious so that when they do start engaging in those spaces, they're a lot more wary of those offers that are coming through, of the threats that are coming in to try to scare them into acting. And the fact that something is unsolicited, that they haven't asked for it, should make them wary of any kind of messaging that they might get that is encouraging, especially if it requires them to take action or give up personal data. Now, our final activity starts to move a little bit more into the more technical realm of cybersecurity. So the first three really emphasize that, I guess, privacy of data and safety online, specifically related to the safety of your data or the security of your data. The last activity that we've presented for you as a collection this month is one on cryptography. And I guess the emphasis here is for you to think about how data is kept secret and safe, and to give students an opportunity to work with some of the, I guess, principles behind a lot of this. So one of the things that's really important to emphasize with these activities, both the unplugged and the online activities, is that students aren't actually using the techniques that computers use. but the principles behind the techniques that are being used in real systems are applicable or are based on the same fundamentals. So we introduce them to the idea of a Caesar cipher, and we provide you with an easy template that you can use to create a wheel that will allow you to decode a Caesar cipher. We give you a series of instructions and some activities to do with students, and then they essentially step through the process of decoding a number of different messages. So each of these messages here uses a different key. You take the code wheel, you align it to the key as we describe in the instructions, and it's probably worth walking it through with students the first time. And it's nice, it's the kind of thing you can demo really easily through a video conference link as well as doing in person. But students then align it with the key, and then you fill out the decoded messages for each of these. And what we've actually done with this particular activity is once you've decoded all the individual messages, the little gray boxes can be combined in an order, and you get a secret message hidden within the secret messages as well. So there's a lot of fun here. It really does give you an opportunity to reinforce the same idea with students. So there's a bit of repetition, but there's enough variation that it keeps it fresh. And you can even use this as the basis of getting students to write their own messages so they can send hidden and secret messages to other students in the class as well. The learning outcome really is that emphasis on the need to hide information to keep it secure. You can talk about the fact that when you're transmitting data through a network or on the internet, you can't hide the information from all of the computers in between the source and the destination. That information has to pass through and therefore can be read by every one of those devices. So it's absolutely critical that you're not sending that information in the clear. It needs to be obscured some way. Algorithms are used to hide that information. So tying this back to algorithms is really valuable. Linking it back to data representation, something that Rosie's mentioned there in the chat. Plenty of opportunities to do that too. And there are a whole range of activities that explore different elements of data representation in the cybersecurity context that you can explore online. We've actually got another example on our website that's outside of the Cybermarvel collection of activities. But the thing that we want students to understand there is that an algorithm is used to hide the information, and being able to reverse that algorithm is important for you to be able to read the original message. And that's kind of the emphasis of our second or the online part of this activity. So here, this is basically just an online version of the cipher wheel activity. This time, rather than spinning the wheel, you simply use the up and down arrows to try different keys, which is doing the rotation of the wheel for you. But the other thing that I think is particularly interesting to show students is that you don't have to just rotate the alphabet, right? There are other algorithms that you can apply here that will mix text up in different ways. And a simple substitution, mixed substitution cipher is a really nice way of giving kids the feeling that they've achieved something that looks really, really difficult. It seems hard at first, right? You look at that and LZV, PFL, that encrypted message there, it just looks like nonsense. And you think, what chance have I got to actually decrypt this message? But understanding that the word "the" is one of the most common words in English, and therefore, if we take the word that appears the most in this little sentence and make it "the," we can see very quickly what some of the other words in this particular message are likely to be. And as you start to fill those out, and it reveals itself, the message becomes very, very obvious a little down the track. And the second problem in this sequence is even more interesting because it's a much longer message. And although it may feel overwhelming, applying that same technique, looking for things like patterns in language that you understand, that you can predict, will allow students to get out very, very long and complicated looking bits of text without knowing anything at all about the substitution that's been used here. So Peter's mentioned there in the chat that with Year 6 students is used frequency distribution of letters. If in the full version of our challenges, that's something that we do. We introduce the idea of frequency distribution of letters. We do it with words as well. And through that, students are able to decrypt some very, very complicated amounts of text. And it's a really rewarding feeling, that idea that you've been able to take what looks like gibberish and turn it into something meaningful. So the learning outcome here is really an opportunity to talk a little bit about the complexity of algorithms, that as soon as you know a little bit about the data involved, it's actually easy, or maybe not easy in all cases, but possible to actually decode information once you understand what could be done. But the discussion around this afterwards is that on the internet, algorithms must be very secure to protect our information. If you can guess something like that last substitution cipher, then using a substitution cipher for your bank details when you're communicating with the bank is really not going to cut it. You need something far more secure than that. But the principles are the same. It might be that the algorithm is more complicated and therefore extremely difficult to guess, if it's guessable at all. But the idea is identical. And so someone has come up with an extremely complicated algorithm, but that algorithm is just doing exactly the same thing. It's applying some kind of transformation on the text or on the message, and what comes out the other side can be decoded as long as you know what that algorithm is. So before we finish up this afternoon, I wanted to talk a little bit more about our other supporting resources are out there. So if you want to do more of this beyond what's offered up in the Cybermarvel activities, you can go out and do that. The supporting resources that are available on our website are quite numerous. We've been doing cybersecurity now for a few years, and we're excited that we'll be able to expand this offering as the curriculum highlights cybersecurity a little bit more. The first of those is we've got a suite of cyber challenges that continues to grow. And on our website, you'll see these logos all over the place. There's our information security challenge, our secondary and primary version, phishing and scams, data encryption or cryptography, web applications, network security, our cyber comp, which is running again in November this year, and cyber pursuit, which was a series of capture the flag style problems, a very different take on these types of activities. That was quite a lot of fun for older students, not really targeted at primary school, that one. But all of the challenges, all of the activities we do, we support with lesson plans, with teacher notes, which I see a couple of you have mentioned already in the chat today, answers for everyone who's registered, and a number of posters for the classroom, which we've referred to earlier in the session today as well. All of the offline activities are available on our website too. Fancy copies of the cards you can download and print yourself so that you can laminate them or give kids a different version. You can even download and remix them if you like. They are published under a Creative Commons license. But all of these things are available on the website, and unless we've now gotten rid of the last 13 packs, Nicola might be able to give us an update. Make sure you register for your Cybermarvel resource pack and get some copies of a lot of these resources free that you can put up in your classroom this year and next. You'll also find all of these resources on our website under the Grok Cyber filter on the resources page of our Grok Academy website. Just visit there, click the Grok Cyber button. Cybermarvel, which is our, the primary school short activity collection I've been talking about today, is there. But the other one that you want to have a look at is our full information security challenge for primary school students. That's great. It presents a lot of the information through a series of Zoom calls with the actors themselves. We hired them again, we got them back in, and we engaged in a number of sort of scenario-based questions. And it was a lot of fun to shoot that, and it's a lot of fun and really engaging for kids to actually, be in a conversation with Harry and Fabian, as opposed to just reading their posts online. So check that one out as well if you want to play around with that. The Cybermarvel page with the registration link, we've already mentioned a couple of times, but You'll find that on the website as well. We've got a big banner at the top of the page right now, which takes you straight to it, and that will stay there for the whole of October. So feel free to hit that up and get involved with the other aspects of the Cybermarvel activities if you haven't already. And that is available to students right across the country, regardless of which jurisdiction they're in. But a big shout out, I think, to New South Wales DOE, who really did drive a lot of the work to get this program off the ground. So thanks for all of the support and for really, doing your work to make this a reality for your teachers. It's been fantastic. I mentioned the information privacy and security challenge. This is what it looks like on our website. You can see it's about 2 hours long, 2 to 4 hours, I say, but for most students, they get it done a little bit quicker than that. And we've already mentioned the teacher notes and the lesson plans, which include a series of other types of online and offline activities you can do with your students to support the material that's in that challenge. In addition to that, our website also includes a number of other offline activities around a number of different topics. So this extends beyond cybersecurity. If there's other stuff you want to do that's digital technologies related, we've got some more there, and this will continue to grow. There's also an interactive version of the Know Your Risks game. So instead of using the cards, if you wanted to do it on the interactive whiteboard or something like that, you can fire that up, run it up on the PowerPoint, and essentially do a bit of a discussion, one-to-many type version of the activity like we've done today in the webinar as well. Our classroom posters, we've got 8 of these. This is all of them. This is what you get in the pack. So I encourage you to go ahead and sign up and get the activities and download full versions and print them out at school, nice and big, so you can put them up on your classroom walls, or put them up in your staff room as well, as a way of engaging teachers with cybersecurity principles more broadly and encourage them to do some of these activities in their class. And that's it. That brings us to the end of the webinar. So I was going to say, next up, one of the things we'd really like to do is hear from you, how you found the activities that we've made available to you this month, any feedback you've got, any criticism that you might have over the activities or aspects of the activity. As Mona has done there in the chat, we'd love to get your feedback on today's webinar as well. So that's the link right there that's been sent out. I think Nicola are also going to send the link out to everyone to complete the evaluation. We'd also like to get an evaluation for our friends at Google, who have also supported us with putting on today's webinar as well. So expect to receive a couple of links to various evaluations. We'd really encourage you to fill those out. It's important for us to be able to feed that back and continue to offer additional activities like this in the future, both in terms of the activities in the classroom and for webinars for teachers and professional development like you've just been a part of. So yeah, get in touch, stay engaged with us at Grok Academy and reach out, sign up. You can always hit us up on the email addresses there, and please make sure you share the resources with other teachers and you complete that link to the evaluation form. So I might get you to post that one more time in the chat for us, please, Mona, Nicola, and we'll get people to head off and do that evaluation form right now. It won't take you too long. So thanks for your involvement and your engagement today. It's been a lot of fun to actually be talking to teachers again, given how long I've been in lockdown here in the ACT.
Family room.
Thanks for your engagement, and we'll speak to you and engage with you again in the future. Thanks a lot.
Hallway, family room, or entrance.